The Bloom Apotheosis, a fantastical theory that once gave birth to thousands of stories of people gaining extraordinary powers. I, as a boy, dreamt many times of gaining the powers of flight, super strength, telekinetic abilities, pyrokinesis, among many others, Professor Softman began. Never had I imagined that during my early adulthood, that dream would come true. He turned to his laptop, pressing a key and switching a slide on the large screen on the wall, showing a few old pictures of people flying, cars and buildings on fire, tears in reality, and text describing the scenes. Now all of you consider all this quite normal. The occasional transdimensional tear that spews out nightmarish creatures, people randomly getting powers that range from something as simple and small as being able to change color like a chameleon, all the way to accidentally turning an entire city into a wasteland. He switched to the next slide, showing a massive crater. See Incident X1. What you are looking at is the Italian city of Vicenza on August 5, 2032, or what is left of it, and the effects of what some of these powers might have. Our theory is that either a pyrokinetic caused the explosion, or a tachykinetic by breaching the speed of light, both of which would have the same result, about 40,000 mortalities. He switched to the next slide. Asheville, United States, January 19, 2033, 20,000 dead. Then the next, Kanagawa, Japan, January 25, 2033. Surprisingly, only 302 confirmed mortalities. Then again the next, and by far the worst one on record, San Salvador, April 3, 2033, Silent Sunday. He turned to the class, inspecting them for a second, looking at their reactions. A telepath called Juan Delgado, with a history of mental health issues and undiagnosed schizophrenia, had a psychotic episode, which he unwittingly spread onto the entire city, causing intense seizures resulting in severe stroke in every instance. Death toll is the entire population of San Salvador and the neighboring towns and villages, about 550,000. The picture on screen showed people in hazmat suits and with strange helmets inspecting the street filled with corpses. Upon locating him wandering the streets in a daze, he was mistook for a traumatized survivor. He proceeded to kill a further 30 people before being restrained, tested, and catalogued. He was then terminated via cranial liquidation. The professor paused. Back then, a bullet to the head. Now I am sure you are aware of most, if not all, of these incidents. And you know that at one point they were almost a daily occurrence in the early days of the Bloom. Now we needed data and a way to control all of this. He switched to another slide. A new wing of the UN was established, at first called the United Nations Cataclysm Division, or just UNCD for short. Other than the awfully creative name, they had an equally as effective and creative set of measures to fight against potential threats. At first they weren't much. He switched on to a new slide showing UN troops in various locations around the globe, lines of people, testing, UN soldiers restraining people. We needed to catalog each and every person for potential powers, and most importantly, we had to uphold law and order. About 20% of the population gained a variety of powers, most of which were not able to do damage on a mass scale. Only about 0.0002% of the population was estimated to be critical. In other words, one sneeze and a city block goes kaboom. Despite the small proportion, which would be less than 20,000 people if we account for the 8 billion humans alive at the time, that is still like having around 20,000 sentient atomic bombs walking around. A new slide showed a video of a person with a UN uniform manipulating earth and rubble, turning them into spikes and shooting them into an assailant that was expertly dodging them. Fighting fire with fire was the name of the game. While most of the awakened were still humans of flesh and blood, being able to fly at high speed still means you won't end well if you smashed yourself into a building, or breaking the sound barrier for that matter. The video ended after one of the rocky spikes hit the torso of the flying individual, killing him instantly. It took about a decade to establish some sort of normality. Many countries descended into anarchy. Entire populations were wiped out and billions were displaced. The estimated death toll in that decade, so from 2032 to 2042, is estimated to be between 600 and 800 million. In those 10 years, many changes took place. Many governments opted for the totalitarian approach. While not many of them are still left today, we still have to contend with a few that still pose a threat to global security. Softman switched to a slide showing a world map with the borders. In blue were the countries deemed to be stable and democratic, with guaranteed liberties. In red were the countries deemed unstable and a threat to global security. Among them was North Korea, Venezuela, the Cape Republic, the East Siberian Federation, Yakutia, the Arkhangelsk People's Republic, and various blotches of red in contested areas in Africa, South Asia, Siberia, and South America. This map may be outdated since the situation quickly changes from month to month, Softman added, before switching to another slide, with only 3 words. Why and how? Now this brings us to the question as to why and how most of the map you saw was in blue. How come the bloom was not as apocalyptic as many expected it to be? How come we all aren't living as peasants to some of the more powerful uplifted? Can anyone answer that question? Softman looked around the class. Some of the students seemed hesitant, but a few did raise their hand. Softman pointed to one of the female students. Christina, right? He asked. The young brunette nodded. Let's hear it, he said. First and foremost, the most important thing was the quick reaction of the UN and the establishment of a global force which was able to organize SciFi as a response to the event. Many of the militaries around the globe also were able to keep some level of order in the initial stages. You know your stuff, I see. Great job. And you do segue us onto the next topic, which will be the main topic of discussion throughout these 4 years. But I will ask one more. What other reasons are there for most of the world still being stable after the bloom? Softman asked. Another student raised his hand. You name? Softman asked. Jan Michalski, sir, he answered. Drop the sir, go ahead, tell us what you think. Softman leaned against the wall, looking into Jan inquisitively. Opportunity, desperation, security, acceptance, and most importantly, the monopoly on violence, John began. Do elaborate on that, Softman asked. Sure, well, in the first days most were confused and couldn't control their powers. Some accidentally hurt or killed their loved ones. Some hurt themselves, destroyed things around them, and ordinary people found them terrifying. In some regions across the world, mobs would form to kill anyone who showed any kind of power. Rarely those capable of fighting back refused to hurt others, relegating themselves to fate. Be it because of guilt, indifference, or just cowardice. Most fought back, making themselves out to be the monsters they were described as. Others, even while in possession of powers, were not able to hold back a mob even if they tried. Some powers are simply useless in combat or defense. In those desperate times, many tried to find a purpose in their life. They tried to make a difference with their powers. And being feared and ostracized did not help. Some hid, some wandered. They had no security, no purpose, no mission. The UNCD offered them all of that. They offered them acceptance. They will be treated like human beings. They will be given shelter and work. In exchange, they must help the UNCD to fight back against those who caused harm to others, or to convince others that the best course of action is to join the UNCD. In that, they were given purpose and stability, something all human beings need to live properly. And they were given community as well. They could talk and share with others like them. Jan explained. Good points, Softman said. Very good points. I like your thinking. But what about the monopoly of violence? Please do explain. The UNCD was able to, slowly at first, obtain more and more uplifted or awakened. They studied them, and with each new person that joined, they were able to more effectively use their abilities. Soon enough, millions were under their command. With the programs aimed at educating, teaching, and training the powers of those who serve for the UNCD, they became effective tools and weapons against the rogues. Their loyalty ensured and still ensures the stability and balance of power in the world. The UNCD had both the moral and technical edge in all regards. They were organized while most of the rogues were lone wolves, and sometimes in small groups. Only later did larger communities start to form, but most were and still remain peaceful. Excellent, Softman said, nodding along. I am glad to hear many of you are well informed. I have high hopes for this generation. Anyway, Softman turned to his laptop and onto the next slide. The Bureaucratic and Statistics of Paranormal Powers Division of the UN is the one we will be focusing on. I am here to teach you the basics of the paperwork being done to ensure no uplifted goes unaccounted for. that each is given his or her rights and treated fairly, and that each has the opportunity to expand and improve their powers for the greater good. Softman looked up, seeing the clock. But looking at the time, I'm afraid that I won't be able to properly explain the basics in this time frame. So we'll continue tomorrow, Softman said. The class began to get up from their seats. Did I say that the class is over? All the students paused. Softman looked at them with a stern expression. They all slowly returned to their seats. When the bell rings, you're free to go. Have some time to let everything sink in. Softman sat down on his chair. He looked tired. A minute passed before one of the students raised their hand. Yes? Professor Softman looked at the student who raised his hand. I apologize if this may be a rude question, but how old are you, sir? Softman let out a chuckle. Well, let's see. I did have a pet T-Rex back in the day, so, Softman said jokingly. Only a few students let out weak laughs. I was 74 the last time I counted. Why do you ask? I know I may look younger than I actually am, Softman said, again with a sarcastic tone. Oh well, the student began. I wanted to ask about the first days when it all began. I heard some stories from my grandparents, but... You're curious, I assume. Yes. Well, Softman looked back to the clock. I guess we have some time for a story. When all this started, I was rather young. Softman paused briefly before continuing. Around your age back then. A 20-something boy who was in the middle of his studies, with high hopes of getting his law degree and getting a good job after. I was living in Germany at the time with my parents and my brother. I wouldn't say we were close, but him and I have been through thick and thin. He was my brother, my family. I don't remember the day it all began. It is fuzzy at best. I am sure you heard plenty of stories where people go into vivid detail where they were, what they were doing, with who they were, and I get it. Such rapid and traumatic change etches itself into one's brain. But not for me. It might have been the case if it were not for another unfortunate event that usurped that original trauma, if you will. Softman paused again, his eyes shifting from left to right, his mind digging deep into the memories. It was about a year after. My mother was one of the initial people who gained powers, who were uplifted. She accidentally killed herself by freezing a room. She had the ability to freeze, a rare ability. She was protecting us. Can't remember what it was exactly. My father died shortly after. He got sick. Probably sepsis or some other sort of infection. He obtained many injuries. That left me and my younger brother to fend for ourselves. After some time, we joined a rather large group of survivors that had a base of operations in the outskirts of Berlin. It was a warehouse complex in Schönefeld. Yes, that was around the time the UNCD was also established, but we still didn't know that it existed. We were armed, trained. We did what was necessary to survive. It was a struggle. Softman paused again. My brother was lucky. He barely had a scratch on him most of the time. I didn't really give it much attention at first. A few months after joining the group, I was violently awoken by my brother being forcibly dragged out. It turned out he was hiding something from all of us. He also obtained a power. He could regenerate quite quickly, to the point even if his limbs were amputated, with proper care a new one would grow within 24 hours. I remember when they went to test him first, they cut his arm pretty deep, nothing major if he didn't have any abilities. It would still need a few weeks to heal. For him it healed in under a minute. No scar, nothing. I tried to stop them from doing something, from killing him. A bullet to the head would still probably kill him. Probably. Yet they had other plans. They used him, harvesting his limbs and organs for transplants, selling them on the black market that popped up too. I couldn't do anything, but I was convinced I could. I tried a couple of things, but I was too late. Even with his healing factor, he died of shock during one harvest. His body went through too much. Later, I joined the UNCD with the goal to make sure that those things never happened to anyone else. Never, to fight for a better future. The class was in a stunned silence. Never let power get into your head, and never let a lack of power turn you bitter. Never see your fellow man as higher or lower than you. We all end under the same soil eventually, Professor Softman said as he looked to his students. Then the bell rang. The students were still in their seats. Come on then, class is over. Don't be late to the next one, Softman said. The students packed up and left, leaving him alone to prepare the next presentation on his laptop. He stopped for a second, a thought crossing his mind. They'll remember that, he thought. Maybe they'll find the reasons why all this happened. The real reason. I just hope those kids don't go through the hell we've went through. Never again. Never.